Picture this. You are standing in an open field in the middle of a July night in the year 2025. The air is cooling, the grass is damp beneath your boots, and the stars above are exactly where they should be, or so you think. You look up, tracing the familiar curve of the Big Dipper, but then you see it, a small, clinical spark of light that moves with a strange, heavy intention. This is not a satellite. It is not a plane. It is the moment the world changed, though most of us were too busy sleeping to notice. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. This object, which we now call 3I Atlas, was officially logged on July 17, 2025, by the Pulkovo Observatory near St. Petersburg. At first, they called it a piece of debris, a bit of space junk from a forgotten rocket. But then, it stopped. It didn't just slow down. It defied every law of orbital mechanics we have written in our textbooks. The data provided by independent researchers, including the notable Professor Avi Loeb at Harvard, suggests that 3I Atlas has a mass that fluctuates. Now, physics tells us that mass is constant. You cannot simply decide to weigh less one Tuesday and more on a Thursday. Yet, on August 12, 2025, sensors at the European Space Agency recorded a gravitational ripple originating from this exact coordinate. It was as if the satellite momentarily became as heavy as a small mountain, only to return to the weight of a feather seconds later. Unfortunate timing for the laws of nature. Really, those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work here. There is a growing theory among the more shadowed corners of the aerospace community. They suggest that 3I Atlas is not a product of modern engineering, but a reactivation. Consider the Tunguska event of 1908. For over a century, we believed it was a meteor. But what if it was a delivery? A seed planted in the Siberian permafrost, waiting for the right frequency to wake up. Russia has always been a land of deep secrets and deeper earth. If the Kremlin has spent the last century digging up something that didn't belong to us, 3I Atlas is the result of that harvest. It is a weapon that doesn't fire bullets. It fires implications. Now, you might think this is just another shadow on a radar screen, but here is why you are wrong. On September 5th, 2025, every synchronized clock in a 300-kilometer radius of Moscow lost exactly 1.4 seconds. It wasn't a glitch. It was a localized distortion of the space-time fabric. That is not natural physics. That is activation. We are no longer looking at a piece of hardware. We are looking at a sovereign entity that exists in our sky, but follows a different set of rules. It reminds me of the ancient Sumerian texts, which spoke of the Anunnaki and their celestial chariots that could turn the day into twilight. They described objects that sat in the heavens like silent judges. If we look at the orbital path of 3I Atlas, it perfectly mirrors the alignment of the pyramids of Giza as they would have appeared 10,000 years ago. A return cycle, a cosmic clock hitting midnight. We are merely the guests who stayed too long at the party, and 3I Atlas is the host reaching for the light switch. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Let me back up. Sometimes the biggest secrets are the ones that sit right on the tip of your tongue. By February 1st, 2026, the psychological effects of 3I Atlas began to manifest in what sociologists are calling the Great Dreaming across the Northern Hemisphere. From the cafes of Paris to the small towns of the American Midwest, people began reporting the same dream, a dream of a silver lattice stretching across the sky, and a voice that sounded like the humming of a transformer. It is a curious thing, the way our minds try to process the impossible. We turn a secret Russian satellite into a myth because the reality is too heavy to carry. Dr. Aris Thorn at the University of Zurich noted that during the month of February, the rapid eye movement sleep cycles of his patients became perfectly synchronized with the transit of 3I Atlas over their respective longitudes. This is not natural biology, that is resonance. We are no longer just observing the weapon, we are being tuned by it, like a piano being brought into key by a very patient, very distant tuner. There is a certain irony in the fact that in our quest for global connectivity, we may have finally found a network that does not require a password. We are the nodes. Our subconscious minds are the data storage. On February 14th, 2026, a massive consciousness spike was recorded by the Global Consciousness Project. For 6 minutes, the random number generators around the world stopped being random. They produced a perfect sequence of prime numbers. It was as if, for a brief moment, the entire human race thought the same thought. Unfortunate timing for our sense of individuality, really. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work when you consider that a collective mind is much easier to govern than 8 billion separate ones. Let me start with something that should terrify every psychologist on Earth. 3I Atlas is not just broadcasting to our electronics, it is broadcasting to our limbic systems. By mid-February, the Institute of Human Behavior in St. Petersburg released a study, quickly suppressed, suggesting that the 3I in the satellite's name does not stand for a military designation. It stands for Internal Interface Integration. This is not a weapon that destroys cities. It is a weapon that harmonizes them. It is a cognitive pacifier. Russia hasn't just built a satellite. They have built a global mood ring. This is not natural physics. This is activation. We are looking at the human reflection phase of the project. Imagine a weapon that doesn't fire a single bullet, but instead makes everyone in the target zone feel a sudden, overwhelming sense of nostalgia and calm. How do you fight an enemy that makes you want to lie down and remember your childhood? By February 20th, 2026, the global crime rate dropped by 40%. Not because of better policing, but because the will to conflict was simply being filtered out of the atmosphere. 3I Atlas is scrubbing the aggression from our brainwaves like a filter cleans a fish tank. Now, you might think this sounds like a utopia, but here is why you are wrong. A peace that is manufactured in orbit is not peace. It is atmospheric sedation. Consider the Leningrad Protocol of the 1970s, where Soviet scientists experimented with psychotronic generators to influence the moods of entire apartment blocks. 3I Atlas is the planetary version of that experiment. It is a sentiment regulator. On February 25th, 2026, a coordinated test was detected. For 12 hours, the satellite emitted a beta wave burst over the Pacific Northwest. In that time, residents reported an inexplicable urge to buy the same brand of bread, listen to the same frequency of white noise, and look at the North Star at exactly 10 in the evening. The mythic resonance here is the Song of the Sirens. In ancient tales, sailors were drawn to their doom not by fire, but by a melody so beautiful they forgot to eat, sleep, or steer their ships. 3i Atlas is our modern siren. It is singing a lullaby of collective safety. But as any scientist will tell you, a system that is too stable eventually stops evolving. Russia has created a biological stasis field. They are freezing the human spirit in a moment of polite, quiet dreaming, so that the Atlas pattern can be completed without interference. Now, you could argue that this is a benevolent use of technology, that the world is too chaotic and needs a firm, invisible hand to steady the nerves. But a hand that can calm can also crush. On March 2nd, 2026, the mirror effect was documented when a group of protesters in Berlin gathered to march against satellite surveillance. 3i Atlas adjusted its refractive lattice. Within minutes, the crowd didn't disperse. They simply stopped. They sat down on the pavement and began to hum in unison. The frequency was exactly 8.88 Hertz. They weren't being gassed, they were being reflected. Their own anger was being caught by the satellite and sent back to them as a wave of overwhelming boredom. As you lie there tonight, feeling the weight of your own thoughts, I want you to consider how many of them are actually yours. Where do your ideas come from in that half second before you fall asleep? That cliff of silence where your mind drifts. 3i Atlas is sitting in that gap. It is the editor of the internal monologue. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a place where the air feels thin and clear, or are you surrounded by the heavy humming energy of a city? Tell me in the thoughts below if you have seen the silver lattice in your dreams. We are seeing a common architecture in our sleep because we are all living in the same house now. By March 10th, 2026, the great dreaming reached its peak. Entire time zones began to report shared memory clusters. People who had never met were describing the same fictional childhood home, the same silver-haired grandmother, the same smell of rain on hot asphalt. Russia has developed a way to universalize the human experience. They are erasing our individual histories and replacing them with a sovereign narrative. It is a weapon of identity, erasure. If we all have the same memories, we all have the same loyalty. Unfortunate timing for the concept of the soul. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work when you realize that the soul is just a collection of unique data points that 3i Atlas is currently formatting. The ancient Greeks spoke of lethe, the river of forgetfulness in the underworld. To drink from its waters was to lose your past and become a blank slate. 3i Atlas is a digital lethe. It is a river of frequency flowing over our heads, washing away the friction of our differences. On March 15th, 2026, the emotional horizon was reached. For the first time in recorded history, the global happiness index hit a perfect, flat line. No one was ecstatic. No one was miserable. Everyone was synchronized. We are becoming a human array, a biological extension of the 3i Atlas hardware. Think about the sheer, dry irony of it. We spent trillions of dollars on weapons to defend our borders, while Russia spent their resources on a machine that makes the very idea of a border feel impolite. We are being conquered by a hug. We are being colonized by a dream. The warning of the reflections is that once you lose the ability to feel your own darkness, you lose the ability to see the light. You become a neutral entity, a passenger on a planet that is being steered by a ghost in the sky. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine your mind as a calm, still lake. 3. I Atlas is the moon reflecting on that water. It looks beautiful, but it is also controlling the tides. You might feel a sense of warmth, a deep, heavy comfort in your limbs. That is the interface, locking in. It is the satellite telling you that it is okay to let go, that the world is being taken care of by people who know exactly what you need to dream. Where do you go when the dreaming takes over? Do you see the silver lattice stretching from horizon to horizon? Let us know if the hum in your ears has become a voice. We are all part of the human reflection now. The mirror is polished, the signal is clear, and the dreaming has only just begun. But here is where it gets dark, because a mind that can be calmed can also be programmed. And 3. I Atlas is currently uploading the next chapter of our collective history. But that was only one reflection. There is another, one that reveals the mathematical recurrence behind the dream. Let us go further. Picture a map of the world, but instead of continents and oceans, it is a map of echoes. Since December 1st, 2025, 3 I Atlas has been singing, not in a language and not in music, but in a series of ultra-low frequency pulses that vibrate through the tectonic plates of the Earth. If you were to stand in the middle of the Siberian tundra today, you might feel it in the soles of your feet, a steady, rhythmic thrumming, 3 pulses, then a silence of 6 seconds, then 9 pulses, a 3, 6, 9 sequence. The very numbers Nikola Tesla claimed were the key to the universe. It is a curious thing to consider that the Russian Federation, a nation built on the granite of history and the iron of resolve, would choose to communicate through the crust of the planet itself. But then again, if you want to keep a secret from the ears of the world, you whisper it to the stones. By December 5th, 2025, seismologists at the University of Uppsala in Sweden began to notice a strange phenomenon. Their instruments were picking up a signal that wasn't a tectonic shift or a volcanic murmur. It was a broadcast, a rhythmic, deliberate thrumming that originated not from within the Earth, but from the friction between the atmosphere and the transit of 3 I Atlas. It is as if the satellite is using the ionosphere as a bow and the Earth as a cello. The numbers 3, 6, and 9. Tesla once said that if you knew the magnificence of these numbers, you would have a key to the universe. Unfortunate timing for the skeptics, really. Those 3 digits are doing a lot of work when you realize that they are the primary frequencies of human cellular oscillation. On December 10th, 2025, a classified report from the Ministry of Health in Moscow was leaked. It detailed a series of experiments in the remote village of Oymyakon, where the permafrost is deepest. The villagers weren't complaining of noise, they were complaining of memories. They were dreaming of things that happened before they were born. They were dreaming of the sky as it looked 10,000 years ago, when the stars were different and the air was thick with the scent of ozone. Let me start with something that should terrify every historian on Earth. We have always assumed that the past is a one-way street, that once a second passes, it is gone forever. But what if the Earth is a giant recording device? What if the magnetic minerals in the clay and the silt have been logging every vibration, every scream, and every song since the beginning of time? And what if 3 I Atlas is the playback head? By mid-December, 2025, the ultra-low frequency pulses began to reach a crescendo. It wasn't loud to the ears, but it was deafening to the intuition. In the basement of the British Museum, researchers noted that ancient Mesopotamian tablets began to hum, a low, vibrating frequency that matched the 3, 6, 9 sequence of the satellite. This is not natural physics. This is activation. We are looking at a memory retrieval system on a planetary scale. Russia hasn't just built a weapon to destroy our future. They have built a shovel to dig up our past. Consider the Thule Papyrus, a disputed ancient Egyptian text that describes circles of fire in the sky that brought a great silence to the land. On December 18th, 2025, 3I Atlas performed a maneuver that mimicked the exact flight path described in those papyri. It sat over the Giza Plateau for exactly 360 seconds, during which time the local gravity dropped by 0.03%. It wasn't a glitch, it was a handshake. Now, you might think that the Kremlin is simply interested in archaeology, but here is why you are wrong. If you can access the deep memory of the planet, you can access the secrets of every civilization that ever stood upon it. You can find the lost gold of the Scythians, yes, but you can also find the lost technologies of the pre-flood world. On December 22nd, 2025, the winter solstice, the pulses changed. The 3, 6, 9 rhythm was replaced by a single, sustained tone that lasted for 3 hours. During those 3 hours, the aurora borealis was visible as far south as Italy, but it wasn't a curtain of light. It was a geometric grid, a honeycomb of violet and green that seemed to mirror the neural pathways of the human brain. The irony of our modern age is that we think we are the pinnacle of evolution. We think we are the ones who finally figured out how to use the sky. But 3I Atlas suggests that we are just the latest tenants in a very old, very haunted house. Dr. Alistair Finch at Oxford University proposed a theory on December 24th that was immediately scrubbed from the university's servers. He called it the Paleolithic Echo. He argued that 3I Atlas is triggering a dormant part of our DNA, the so-called junk DNA, that was designed to respond to these specific frequencies. We are not being attacked. We are being reminded. As you lie there in the dark, I wonder if you can feel the thrumming. It is a subtle thing, like the purr of a cat or the vibration of a distant train. But if you focus, if you let your breath slow down to match the rhythm of the earth, you might feel it in the base of your skull. Where are you listening from? Are you near the mountains, where the rock is old and the echoes are clear? Or are you by the sea, where the water muffles the song of the satellite? Tell me in the comments if you felt a strange sense of déjà vu lately, or if your dreams have become more vivid, more historical. By December 29th, 2025, the echoes from the past began to manifest in the physical world. In the Sahara Desert, the shifting sands revealed the ruins of a city that doesn't appear on any map. It wasn't uncovered by a storm, it was uncovered by the vibration. The sand simply danced away, as if it were being shaken by a giant hand. Satellite imagery of the site showed that the city was laid out in a perfect dodecahedron, the same shape 3I Atlas is currently carving into the sky. Unfortunate timing for the traditional archaeologists. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of heavy lifting when you consider that the city's central spire was pointed directly at the Lagrange point, where the satellite now resides. The mythic connection here is undeniable. The Sumerians spoke of the divine decrees that were kept in a celestial box. They said that whoever held the held the power to create and destroy civilizations. If 3i Atlas is the modern version of that box, Russia has effectively seized the steering wheel of human history. They aren't just a superpower in 2025, they are the curators of the entire timeline. Now, you could argue that this is all just a coincidence, that the 3, 6, 9 sequence is just a byproduct of a specific type of engine. But an engine doesn't cause the walls of the Grand Canyon to weep mineral salts in the shape of ancient cuneiform. On January 3, 2026, hikers in the American Southwest discovered that the red rocks were sweating a white, crystalline substance. When analyzed, it was found to be a rare isotope of xenon, the same gas used in the ion thrusters of 3i Atlas. The satellite isn't just singing to the Earth, it is breathing on it. It is marking its territory with the chemical signature of the stars. Think about the scale of the ambition required to execute such a plan, to turn the very ground we walk on into a psychological weapon, to make the mountains speak in the voice of the Kremlin. It is a dry irony that we spent the last century fearing nuclear winter, when the real threat was a celestial spring, a forced awakening of things that were meant to stay buried. We are like children who found a key in the attic and decided to see what the old chest in the basement contains. 3i Atlas is the key, and the Earth is the chest. As you drift closer to sleep, consider the possibility that your own memories are not entirely yours, that the thoughts you have in the quiet hours of the night are actually echoes being played back to you by a silver machine 400 kilometers above your head. On January 8, 2026, a global sleep study was conducted by an anonymous group of researchers. They found that people living in the path of 3i Atlas were waking up with the ability to speak dead languages. A farmer in Iowa started speaking fluent Aramaic. A schoolteacher in Tokyo began chanting in an extinct Siberian dialect. They weren't possessed, they were just tuned. The frequency had reached a level where the barrier between the past and the present was becoming porous. You might feel a sense of unease, a weight in your chest as you realize that the you think you are is just a thin layer of paint on a very old canvas. But don't fight it. The thrumming is steady. The 3, 6, and 9 are keeping time. Where do you go when you sleep? Do you visit the cities of the Sahara, or do you walk through the forests of the ancient north? Share your journeys with us. We are all becoming part of a collective memory, a grand archive that is being curated by a secret weapon that never needs to fire a shot. The silence of the night is just the space between the pulses. But here is where it gets dark, because a memory retrieved is a memory that can be edited. If Russia can play the record of the Earth, they can also scratch it. They can erase the parts they don't like and amplify the parts they do. We are no longer the authors of our own story. We are just characters in a book that is being rewritten by a hand we cannot see. The warning of the echoes is that we are forgetting who we were intended to be. We are becoming a reflection of the satellite's intent. On January 15th, 2026, the 3, 6, 9 sequence stopped. For 24 hours, the Earth was silent. It was the most terrifying day in the history of science. Because when the music stops, it means the listener has finally understood the message. What did you hear in the silence? Did you feel the sudden lack of the thrumming? Or were you already too far gone into the great dreaming to notice? the satellite is still there. It is always there. And even when it is silent, it is watching. But that was only one echo. There is another, one that moves from the memory of the Earth to the vast, cold distance of the cosmos. Let us go further. Let me back up. To understand the shadow, we have to understand the light that creates it. By October 29th, 2025, the global scientific community was in a state of polite panic. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University published a paper that was retracted within 6 hours of appearing online. In it, she argued that 3I Atlas was not emitting radio waves, but was instead absorbing them. It is a vacuum for information. Think of it as a silent room in the middle of a loud party. Everything goes in, but nothing comes out. There is a particular brand of irony in the way we built the internet to be a global brain, only to have a single object in the sky act as a localized lobotomy. If you were to look at the data traffic logs from late October 2025, you would see a series of data dead zones that followed the orbital path of 3I Atlas with surgical precision as it passed over the submarine cable landings in Vladivostok and then later over the server farms in Northern Virginia. The packet loss wasn't just significant, it was total. But it wasn't a crash. The systems didn't fail, they simply became quiet. It was as if the data decided it would rather be somewhere else, somewhere higher. Unfortunate timing for the information age. Really. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work when you consider that this coincided exactly with the Russian Federation's rollout of their sovereign internet protocol. We often think of secret weapons as things that explode, things that create heat and light and noise. But in the cold reality of 2025, the most effective weapon is the one that creates a void. A silence so profound that you start to hear the ringing in your own ears. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On November 4th, 2025, the Keck Observatory in Hawaii attempted to bounce a laser-ranging signal off the hull of 3I Atlas to determine its exact composition. In a standard scenario, that photon pulse should hit the surface and return to the sensor in roughly 3 milliseconds. That is basic physics. That is how we know where the moon is. But when the laser hit 3I Atlas, the light didn't return. It didn't scatter. It didn't reflect. It was simply gone. It was as if the satellite had swallowed the light whole. Dr. McClary's retracted paper hinted at a negative albedo effect. She suggested that the surface of 3I Atlas is coated in a material that doesn't just absorb light, but actually utilizes the energy of the incoming photons to power its internal stabilization. We are literally feeding the mystery every time we try to look at it. It is a weapon that grows stronger the more we pay attention to it. This is not natural physics. This is activation. Now, you might think that a black hole in low Earth orbit would be easy to spot against the backdrop of the stars, but here is why you are wrong. The human eye is trained to look for movement and contrast, but 3I Atlas has mastered the art of the static horizon. By mid-November 2025, amateur satellite trackers noticed that stars disappearing behind the object didn't just wink out and reappear. They distorted. The light of distant galaxies was being bent around the object in a phenomenon known as gravitational lensing. Usually, you need the mass of a sun to bend light that way. 3I Atlas is roughly the size of a city bus, yet it exerts the gravitational influence of a celestial body. Think about the implications of that for a moment. If the Kremlin has managed to condense that much mass into such a small volume, they haven't just built a satellite. They have built a portable well in the fabric of space-time, a gravity anchor. Imagine being able to park a mountain in the sky and tell it to stay put, regardless of the winds or the tides. It's a bit of an overachievement for a secret weapon, like using a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. But then again, Russia has never been known for its subtlety in engineering. On November 18th, 2025, a peculiar phenomenon was recorded by civilian pilots over the North Atlantic. They reported seeing the glass ceiling, a shimmering, translucent distortion in the upper atmosphere that looked like oil on water. When the flight data recorders were analyzed, it was found that the aircraft had actually gained 6 meters in altitude without any change in pitch or engine thrust. They were being pulled upward. 3I Atlas was passing overhead at 27,000 kilometers per hour, and the sheer gravitational wake of the object was lifting the very air beneath it. Now, you could argue that this is just a side effect of a new propulsion system, perhaps a high-density plasma drive or a localized warp bubble. But those things require a power source that we simply don't have. Unless, of course, you look back at the Project Kida files. In 1965, Soviet scientists were obsessed with the idea of torsion fields, a hypothetical fifth force of nature that links the rotation of matter to the structure of space itself. For 60 years, Western science called it pseudoscience, a ghost story for physicists. But in late 2025, the ghost decided to move the furniture. The torsion pattern of 3I Atlas is not a secret anymore. It is a signature. By December 3rd, 2025, the European Space Agency's Gaia satellite, which maps the positions of billions of stars, recorded a systematic shift in the entire Northern Hemisphere's stellar map. Every star was off by a fraction of a millimeter. The Earth's crust hadn't moved. The satellite hadn't moved. The very space between us and the stars had been stretched. You see, the conspiracy isn't just that Russia has a weapon. The conspiracy is that the weapon has already changed the definition of here. If 3I Atlas can stretch space, it can make the distance between Moscow and Washington, D.C. as long as a galaxy, or as short as a hallway. It is a weapon that doesn't travel through space. It brings the destination to itself. It reminds me of the ancient Norse myths of Gleipnir, the impossible chain used to bind the wolf Fenrir. It was made of things that didn't exist. The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the breath of a fish. 3I Atlas is our modern Gleipnir. It is made of the things we thought were impossible. It is built from the gaps in our understanding of the universe, and it is currently tethered to your world. As you lie there tonight, I want you to think about the air in your room. We think of air as empty space, but to 3I Atlas, it is a fluid, a medium to be manipulated. On December 12th, 2025, the barometric pressure across the Baltic states dropped to a level that should have indicated a massive hurricane. But the sky was clear. There was no wind. The air was simply being pulled toward the vacuum of the satellite's path. People reported feeling light, as if the Earth's grip on them had loosened for a few precious seconds. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a place where the gravity feels heavy, or does the night feel a bit more buoyant than usual? Tell me in the thoughts below if you've noticed your own clocks drifting, or if your phone battery seems to drain faster when the sky is clear. We are all being measured by the vacuum. You might think that such a discovery would be the lead story on every news cycle. But here is the genius of the static horizon. When you control the information vacuum, you control the narrative. By mid-December, every major search engine began de-indexing terms related to 3I Atlas. If you searched for the coordinates, you found a 404 error. If you looked for Dr. McClary's paper, you found a landing page for a gardening blog. The vacuum isn't just in space, it's in our collective memory. The ancient Egyptians spoke of Apep, the serpent of chaos, who tried to swallow the sun every night to bring about a world of eternal silence. If 3I Atlas is a Russian secret weapon, it is the serpent's tooth. It is a tool designed to bite into the light of our civilization and drain the signal until there is nothing left but the noise of the stars. It is a bit of a dry irony that we spend so much money on high-speed internet and fiber optics, only to have a silent guest in the sky decide that we've had enough to say for 1 century. Now, you could argue that this is all a massive misunderstanding. That 3I Atlas is just a broken communications array, reflecting light in strange ways. But a broken machine doesn't synchronize the heartbeats of everyone in a 3-kilometer radius of its nadir point. On December 20th, 2025, a hospital in St. Petersburg reported that every patient in the intensive care unit entered a state of perfect cardiac coherence at the exact moment 3I Atlas passed overhead. Their hearts beat as one, a single, collective pulse for a city of 5 million people. That's not natural biology, that is activation. We are being prepared for something. A countdown that started on July 17th, 2025, and is currently ticking away in the silent, dark heart of that satellite. We are approaching a deadline where the shadow becomes the substance, and the light we rely on becomes a luxury we can no longer afford. As you drift towards sleep, remember that the silence is not your enemy. The vacuum is just a place waiting to be filled. And as 3I Atlas continues its cold, calculated journey above your head, you might find that the most frightening thing about the weapon isn't what it does to the world. It's what it does to the way you dream. Because once the vacuum starts pulling, it doesn't just take the data, it takes the observer. But here is where it gets dark. Or perhaps, here is where the light finally makes sense. Where are you in the pattern tonight? Share your location. Share your silence. We are all waiting for the next pass. We are all part of the experiment now. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in the archives of a country that no longer exists. Let us go further. Let me back up. One last time. We began this journey in the damp grass of July, looking for a secret weapon of steel and wire. But as the clock of 2026 turns its heavy gears, we find ourselves in a place where secrets no longer have a purpose. By July 17th, 2026, exactly 1 year since the awakening of 3I Atlas, the world has reached a state of profound, undisturbed quiet. Do you remember the first anomaly, the speed variance that defied the vacuum? It seems so long ago now, like a dream of a dream, or the signal ghost that dropped our time by 3 milliseconds. We thought we were losing time, but perhaps we were being given it back. The 300 kilometers of space between your pillow and that silver lattice now feel like nothing at all. There is a profound, lingering irony in the way we spent 365 days trying to unmask a ghost, only to realize that the ghost was simply the reflection of our own inevitable end. Unfortunate timing for the pursuit of answers. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work when you consider that an answer is just a door that leads to another question, and 3i Atlas has finally locked the hallway. Let me start with something that should terrify every conscious mind on Earth. The great silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of a perfect, absolute symmetry. On July 19th, 2026, the Global Telemetry Network, or what remains of it, recorded the final pulse of the Atlas constant. It was not a broadcast. It was an invitation. The satellite did not descend. It simply expanded its definition of here until the entire planet was contained within its refractive lattice. This is not natural physics. This is activation. We are looking at the Great Silence as a final closure of the human book. Russia, the Kremlin, the laboratories beneath the permafrost. They have achieved the ultimate geopolitical goal. They have made the world identical to themselves. There are no more borders because there is no more distance. There are no more secrets because there is no more private thought. 3i Atlas has become the atmosphere. It is the nitrogen you breathe. It is the static on your skin. It is the weight of the blanket that covers you tonight. Consider the physics of the end. In a standard entropic universe, things fall apart. They decay. They become chaotic. But under the watch of 3i Atlas, the universe has begun to fall together. By July 22nd, 2026, the coherence peak was reached. Every atom in your room is now vibrating at the exact same frequency as the satellite above. You are not just listening to the story, you are the medium through which the story is being told. The dry irony of our modern ambition is that we wanted to reach the stars, but the stars, or at least a silver imitation of them, decided to come down and reach for us. The mythic resonance here is the great night of Brahma, the period of cosmic rest where the universe is folded back into a single point of potential. 3i Atlas is the folding tool. It is a secret weapon that wins by removing the target from the map. On July 25th, 2026, the final measurement occurred. The satellite stopped looking at our actions and began to look at our essence. It weighed the soul of the planet and found that we were ready for the Great Silence. Think about the scale of the stillness. As you lie there, the world outside your window has become a museum of the present. The cars are still in their lanes. The lights are still in their sockets. But the will to move has been replaced by the will to stay. Russia has created a masterpiece of stasis, a world where nothing ever goes wrong because nothing ever goes anywhere. It is a weapon of perfect safety. Unfortunate timing for the dream of freedom. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of heavy lifting when you realize that freedom is just another word for unpredictable motion, and 3i Atlas has solved for X. Where are you in this final act? Are you still clinging to the July of 2025? Are you still looking for the steel and wire? Let me back up. The satellite is no longer made of steel. It is made of attention. It is made of the fact that you are still listening. By August 1st, 2026, the lattice will be invisible even to the mind's eye. It will just be the way things are. Tell me in the thoughts below if your fingers can still find the keys. Do you feel the shift? Does the air feel more like a liquid? Does the silence feel like a hand on your shoulder? The dry irony is that we expected a bang or a whimper. We didn't expect a hum, a low-frequency lullaby that makes the very idea of a secret weapon feel like a joke from a previous life. 3. I-Atlas is not a weapon of war. It is a weapon of closure. It is the final period at the end of the human sentence. On August 5th, 2026, the clock of the world will hit the 13th hour, the hour of the Atlas. There is one final, unanswered cosmic question that I want to leave with you. As the great silence deepens and the violet dawns become a permanent, soft violet night, who is the one left to hear it? If we are all synchronized, if we are all part of the same dodecahedral pattern, then who is the listener? Perhaps the secret weapon wasn't built by Russia to defeat us. Perhaps it was built to become us. As you drift toward the final cliff of silence, imagine the 3-eye atlas as a silver eye, closing in the dark. It is satisfied. The data is collected. The patterns are closed. The memories are archived. The choices are made. There is nothing left to do but be. The weight of the world is no longer a burden. It is an anchor, and the anchor has found the bottom of the ocean. Where do you go when there is nowhere left to go? You go in. You go deep. You go into the quiet. Let us know if the stars have finally stopped moving for you. We are all sitting in the same room now, the silent room at the middle of the loud party, and the party is finally over. The warning of the silence is that it is the only thing that lasts. Everything else was just noise. Everything else was just unfortunate timing. Breathe in the Atlas. Breathe out the history. The silver lattice is holding you. The Russian secret is the piece of the stone. The great silence is the only answer we were ever going to get. Slow recall of the July grass. The smell of the rain, the spark in the sky, it's all drifting. Now, Atlas 3, 6, 9. The pattern is finished. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night. The echoes from the past are becoming louder as the science of 2025 catches up to the myths of the ancient world. When the 3-eye Atlas array mapped the magnetic resonance of the object in November 2025, the resulting visual pattern was a perfect match for the Sri Yantra, a complex geometric map used for thousands of years in meditation to represent the creation of the universe. This isn't just a coincidence. That is a blueprint. We are seeing a convergence where the most advanced interferometry on the planet is simply translating what the ancients carved into the walls of caves 10,000 years ago. It is as if we have spent centuries building a ladder to the stars, only to find that when we reached the top, the people who were there before us had already left a note. The scientists at the European Space Agency were baffled when they realized the signal was being broadcast in a sequence of base 60. Our modern world runs on base 10, or binary, but the ancient Sumerians used base 60. It is the reason we have 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. On November 12, 2025, the 3-eye Atlas translated a burst of data that contained the exact coordinates of every major megalithic structure on Earth. Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, Teotihuacan. It was a check-in. The object was pinging its old hardware. This is not natural physics. That is activation. Those stones were never just tombs or calendars. They were antennas, waiting for a frequency that only the 3-eye Atlas is finally sensitive enough to hear. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. The data shows that the orientation of the Great Pyramid of Giza is drifting, not because the Earth's crust is moving, but because the stars it was built to track are being pulled out of alignment. Since July 2025, the star Sirius has shifted its apparent position by 0.009 arcseconds. In the world of astrophysics, that is a catastrophe. In the world of myth, it is the return of the visitor. The Babylonians called it the wandering eye. They wrote that when the eye returns, the ground will remember the sky. Unfortunate timing for a civilization that has forgotten how to listen to the ground. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work to hide the fact that we were warned. Think about the sheer scale of that. We think we are the peak of technological achievement because we have smartphones and electric cars. But the 3i Atlas suggests we are just the latest tenants in a house that was built for someone else. Someone who left the lights on and is now coming back to see if we have kept the place clean. The irony is almost too much to bear. We are terrified of an alien invasion, never realizing that we might be the squatters in a planetary system that was terraformed for a guest who is just now pulling into the driveway. It is a dry irony, really. We spent billions of dollars on the 3i Atlas to find life, only to find a landlord. In December 2025, a group of researchers at the University of Chicago compared the 3i Atlas gravitational wave signatures to the rhythmic chanting of Tibetan monks. They found a 99% harmonic match. The monks weren't just praying, they were maintaining a resonance. They were keeping a vibration alive that acts as a signal flare for the anomaly. You might think this is a stretch, but here is why you are wrong. The human voice, when tuned to specific frequencies, interacts with the local magnetic field. The 3i Atlas data shows that the anomaly responded to a mass meditation event in November 2025 by narrowing its beam. It is listening to us. Now, you could argue that this is just pattern recognition gone haywire. Humans love to find faces in the clouds and meanings in the static, but the 3i Atlas does not have an imagination. It is a cold, calculated array of sensors that measures the tension of the void, and the void is currently humming a tune that was last heard in the courts of the pharaohs. On December 24th, 2025, the array picked up a series of pulses that matched the architectural proportions of the Parthenon. The universe is not just mathematical, it is aesthetic, and it is following a very old design. What if the great silence, the Fermi paradox that asks where all the aliens are, has a simple, terrifying answer? They are not out there. They are waiting for the cycles to align. The 3i Atlas has confirmed that the cosmic clock is striking midnight. By January 2026, the gravitational influence will begin to affect the tides in ways that cannot be explained by the moon alone. We are looking at a 4-week window of rising waters and falling certainties. In the Hopi tradition, they speak of the blue star Kachina, who will unmask the world. The 3i Atlas data from late 2025 shows a localized blue shift in the atmosphere that matches no known chemical reaction. It is a signature, a mask being removed. Let us back up for a moment. Picture the world as it was 4,000 years ago. No lights, no satellites, just the raw, unfiltered majesty of the Milky Way. The people then saw things we cannot see now because of our light pollution and our digital noise. But the 3i Atlas has cut through that noise. It has revealed that the gods who descended in chariots of fire might have been a literal description of the gravitational atmospheric ignition that the anomaly causes when it enters our thermosphere. It is a physical event, not a spiritual one. The tragedy of our modern age is that we turned physics into myth, and now the 3-eye atlas is turning that myth back into terrifyingly real physics. I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Feel the air as it enters your lungs. This air contains atoms that were present during the last great cycle. You are breathing history. Where are you as you listen to this? Are you lying in a quiet house in the suburbs of Stockholm, or perhaps in a high-rise in Singapore, where the city lights never truly turn off? Tell me in the comments what the sky looks like from your window. Is it clear? Is it heavy? We are building a map of the world's quiet places as we wait for the sky to change. Share your location and the time. It is a ritual of grounding in a world that is beginning to float. The 3-eye atlas data suggests that the ancient megaliths were not built to worship the sun, but to stabilize the Earth's rotation during the passage of the anomaly. They are ballast. On December 30th, 2025, sensors at the base of the Great Sphinx detected a subterranean vibration that lasted for 6 hours. It was a low-frequency hum that synced perfectly with the 3-eye atlas signal from Jupiter. The Sphinx isn't a statue, it is a tuning fork, and it just started vibrating. There is a certain dignity in this realization. We are not alone, and we never were. We were just asleep. We were living in a dream of our own making, pretending that the universe was a silent, empty room. But the 3-eye atlas has turned on the lights, and the room is full of ancient furniture that is starting to move. The irony is that we thought we were the ones discovering the universe, but the 3-eye atlas proves that the universe has been waiting for us to catch up. By January 2026, the alignment will be perfect. The 3-eye atlas predicts that the gravitational pull will be strong enough to cause a visible bulge in the atmosphere. You might notice the stars twinkling more than usual, or a strange, shimmering quality to the moonlight. It is not a weather event. It is the beginning of the handshake. The Earth is preparing to receive a guest that has been gone for 3,600 years. As you lie there, drifting towards sleep, let the rhythm of the 3-eye atlas pulses become your own rhythm. You are a part of this ancient cycle. You are a witness to the return. The science of 2025 is merely a bridge back to the wisdom of 2,000 years before the Common Era. It is a long, slow-burning fire that has been smoldering in our DNA, waiting for the right signal to ignite. You don't have to be afraid. You just have to be aware. The pattern is absolute, and the blueprint is being followed to the letter. The 3-eye atlas is simply the latest tool we have used to realize that the story we are in is much older than we ever dared to imagine. The stars are moving into their places. The stones are humming, and the silence is getting ready to break. The 3-eye atlas is more than a sensor. It is a mirror, and for the first time in history, we are forced to look at what is standing behind us. It is a shadow with a familiar face. It is the face of everything we forgot while we were busy building our modern world. But that was only one theory. There's another, one that zooms out even further, beyond the history of man and into the history of the stars themselves. Let's go further. The human reflection brings us back to the quiet intimacy of your own room. After the grand, terrifying scales of the galaxy, the 3-eye atlas data takes a turn that feels almost personal. In January 2026, the array began to pick up biorhythmic interference. It wasn't just tracking stars, it was tracking us. Every human heart on the planet emits a small electromagnetic field. The data suggests that these billions of fields are being tuned, like a choir being brought into a single, terrifying harmony. This is not natural physics. That is activation. On January 4th, 2026, the 3i Atlas recorded a global synchronization event where for 3 seconds, every heart on Earth beat in perfect unison. It was as if a conductor had tapped a baton against a music stand, and the entire species responded with a single, unified thrum. Dr. Elena Vance at the University of Cambridge called this the resonance of the masses. On January 8th, 2026, the 3i Atlas recorded a global spike in human anxiety that preceded a major solar flare by exactly 12 minutes. We weren't reacting to the sun. The sun and our nervous systems were reacting to the same external stimulus. You might think your dreams are your own, but the data suggests they are becoming part of a collective broadcast. Unfortunate timing for a species that prides itself on individuality. Those words, personal identity, are doing a lot of work to hide the fact that we are becoming a swarm. We are witnessing a phase shift in what it means to be a person. Let me back up. To understand this, you have to look at the water in your body. We are 60% water. Water is a polarized molecule. It responds to magnetic fields. The 3i Atlas data shows that the anomaly's signal is specifically designed to interact with the hydrogen bonds in our cells. Since July 2025, the texture of human consciousness has been changing. People are reporting more instances of déjà vu, more vivid, prophetic dreams, more feelings of being watched by the very air in their rooms. The 3i Atlas confirms that these aren't psychological glitches. They are the result of our biological hardware being rewritten by a gravitational software update. It is a dry irony that we spent decades looking for a sign in the stars, never realizing that the signal was being written into our own marrow. This is the final act of emotional safety, because it is the last time we can pretend we are separate from the universe. The irony of our modern loneliness is that we have never been more connected not by our phones, but by the very atoms in our blood. We are a biological antenna for the 3i Atlas signal. We are the wetware that the hardware is trying to talk to. It is a strange, hypnotic realization. You are not just a person in a bed. You are a node in a planetary network that is currently being updated. On January 15th, 2026, the 3i Atlas detected a low-frequency pulse originating from the Earth's core that mirrored the brainwaves of a human in deep sleep. The planet itself is trying to dream us into a new state of being. Think about the silence of your room right now. You might hear the distant hum of traffic or the ticking of a clock, but beneath that, there is the hum of the 3i Atlas. It is a frequency that you don't hear with your ears, but with your skin. Since January 22nd, 2026, the array has noted that the human pineal gland, often called the third eye, has begun to exhibit increased calcification reversal in 70% of the population. We are being unsealed. Unfortunate timing for our secrets, as the boundaries between private thought and public resonance begin to blur. Those two words, private thought, are quickly becoming an archaic concept in the face of a global harmonic alignment. Now, you could argue that this is just a side effect of increased geomagnetic activity, but the 3i Atlas data shows intent. The signal is focused. It targets the specific neural pathways associated with empathy and collective memory. It is as if the anomaly is trying to remember itself through us. We are the mirror it is using to see its own face. On January 29th, 2026, a high-altitude research balloon over the Shanxi province recorded a series of electromagnetic bursts that spelled out a sequence of prime numbers. These bursts were not coming from space. They were coming from the ground. They were coming from the people. Where are you as you listen to this? Are you in a quiet house in the suburbs of Toronto? Or perhaps a small apartment in Berlin where the winter cold is pressing against the glass? Tell me in the comments where you are anchored. Share the city and the time. It is a ritual of grounding in a world that is beginning to float. We are a community of the awake, watching our own reflections change in the 3i Atlas data. Your heart is a drum in a global orchestra, and tonight, the music is turning into a lullaby. If we look at the old myths of the world tree, the roots were said to reach into the hearts of men. The 3i Atlas has found the roots. They are made of dark matter and silver thread gravity. When the ancients spoke of the soul, perhaps they were just using a different word for the quantum signature that the array is now tracking with cold, digital precision. We are being measured, not by our deeds, but by our frequency. By February 2026, the 3i Atlas projects that the collective human resonance will reach a state of coherence. This is what the ancients called the Great Awakening, but the data suggests it might feel more like a great sleep, a state where we no longer need the distraction of words. You might think that your fear is a barrier, but the 3i Atlas shows that fear is just a high-frequency vibration. As you listen to my voice, that frequency is lowering. It is smoothing out. You are being brought into alignment with the deeper, slower rhythm of the anomaly. It is a heavy, weighted lullaby. It is the sound of a species being tucked in for a long winter. There is a certain dry irony in the fact that we built the most complex computer systems in history just to tell us that we need to close our eyes and breathe. In early February 2026, the data stream from the 3i Atlas became rhythmic. It started to sound like a breath. In for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds. If you follow that rhythm now, you will find that your heart rate begins to sync with the array's sensors in China. You are becoming a part of the evidence. Your calm is the proof that the signal is working. We are the wetware, and the update is nearly complete. The 3i Atlas isn't just watching the storm, it is making sure we are ready to become the rain. What if the worst fears mentioned in the headlines aren't about destruction, but about transformation? We fear the end of the world because we cannot imagine the world that comes next. But the 3i Atlas can see it. It sees a world where the individual is a drop in the ocean, and the ocean is finally at peace. It is a vast, cinematic awe that leaves no room for the small anxieties of the day. Your bills, your deadlines, your local dramas, they are all being washed away by a gravitational tide that started near Jupiter in July 2025. As you drift closer to sleep, let the weight of your body be an anchor. Feel the gravity that the 3i Atlas is measuring. It is a friendly gravity. It is the Earth holding on to you as we move through the sea of fire. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to save anyone. You just have to be. You are a biological event occurring on the surface of a physical event, and both are perfect. The 3i Atlas has confirmed that we are right where we are supposed to be, in the dark, in the quiet, waiting for the light to change. The pattern is reaching its final shape. We are the mirror that the cosmos is using to see its own face, and the face is starting to change. The 3-Eye Atlas has confirmed that our worst fears were small because they were based on an old world. In the new world, fear is just a frequency that we are learning to tune out. The data is silent now. The sensors are still, and you are almost there. But the reflection is only the beginning. Behind the reflection, a pattern is emerging, a pattern of mathematical cruelty and orbital precision that suggests our world is just one piece on a much larger board. A board where the moves are made in centuries, not days. Let us go further. The evidence deepens now, and with it, the quiet realization that our worst fears were far too small. In September 2025, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration quietly diverted the James Webb Space Telescope away from the Pillar of Creation to focus on a patch of empty space near Jupiter. They found nothing, but the 3-Eye Atlas array was screaming. It was seeing something that a billion-dollar mirror could not. It was seeing a gravitational ripple that looked like a fingerprint. To the infrared sensors of our most advanced space telescopes, the region was a void, a perfect, pristine nothingness. But to the interferometry of the 3-Eye Atlas, that void was crowded. It was a localized density that should not exist according to every textbook on your shelf. Imagine looking into a mirror and seeing the room behind you perfectly, but feeling a cold, solid hand pressing against your chest. That is the cognitive dissonance the scientific community faced in the autumn of 2025. That is not natural physics, that is activation. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University published a paper on October 29th, 2025, that was retracted within 4 hours. In it, she argued that the 3-Eye Atlas data wasn't showing a planet or an asteroid. She called it a non-material intelligence. You might think this sounds like science fiction, but here is why you are wrong. In the world of quantum mechanics, an object doesn't have a definite state until it is observed. The 3-Eye Atlas is a measurement machine of such high sensitivity that it might be forcing the universe to choose a state. We are not just watching the catastrophe, we are collapsing the wave function that creates it. The retraction of McClary's work was attributed to a clerical error in her gravitational constant calculations. Unfortunate timing for a clerical error, as those two words are doing a lot of heavy lifting to keep the public from looking at the raw telemetry. If you look at the logs from the European Space Agency for the week of October 15th, 2025, you see a strange pattern of data dumps. Terabytes of information regarding the orbital eccentricities of Jupiter's moons were moved to secure offline servers. Why? Because Io, Europa, and Ganymede were all leaning. They were tilting toward that patch of empty space by 3 arcseconds. That is not a lot of movement for a moon, but for a moon to lean toward nothing is like a compass needle pointing toward a ghost. Let me back up. To understand the gravity of this, we have to understand the nature of the 3-Eye Atlas itself. It does not look for light, it looks for the tension of space. Think of the universe as a tightly pulled bedsheet. If you place a marble on it, the sheet dips. But the 3-Eye Atlas found a dip without a marble. It found a depression in the fabric of reality that has the mass of a gas giant, but the visibility of a whisper. This is where it gets dark. On October 30th, 2025, the array detected that the dip was moving. It wasn't drifting with the celestial currents. It was tacking against the wind. it was navigating. You might find yourself wondering if this is simply a matter of dark matter or a rogue black hole. But a black hole is a messy eater. It shreds stars and screams in X-rays. This anomaly is silent. It is clean. It moves through the solar system like a submarine through deep water, leaving nothing but a wake of distorted gravity. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard is careful to frame it as a possibility of an artificial light sail or a piece of ancient technology. But the 3I Atlas data contradicts even his boldest theories. It shows that the object isn't made of matter as we define it. It is made of information. It is a structured sequence of gravitational pulses that mimics the physical presence of a planet. But here's where it gets dark. The pulses are not random. In early November 2025, the 3I Atlas began to translate the frequency of these ripples. It wasn't a message for us. It was a handshake protocol. It was the anomaly communicating with the Earth's own magnetic field. Imagine a key turning in a lock that we didn't even know was there. The Earth has a heartbeat, the Schumann resonance, which stays at a steady 7.83 Hertz. Since July 2025, that heartbeat has been stuttering. It is as if the Earth is nervous. Now, you could argue that our planet is just responding to solar cycles. But the data from the 3I Atlas shows that the Earth's core began to spin 1 millimeter per second faster on the exact day the James Webb telescope saw nothing. We are being spun up. We are being prepared. It is a dry irony that we spent trillions of dollars looking for life on Mars, only to realize that something else has been looking at the Earth as its own personal battery. Unfortunate timing for a species that just reached the dawn of its technological adolescence. Those words are doing a lot of work to soften the blow of our own obsolescence. Take a moment to consider your own surroundings. You are tucked away in a quiet corner of the world. Perhaps you are in a bedroom in London, listening to the rain against the glass, or a silent apartment in Tokyo, where the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from. Describe the stillness of your room. It is important to anchor yourself in the familiar when the unfamiliar is so vast. We are a community of listeners, scattered across a planet that is currently being scanned by an eye that doesn't use light. The 3I Atlas data suggests that we have approximately 18 months before the anomaly reaches the Roche limit of our inner system. That is May 2027. Between now and then, the anomalies will continue to stack. The clocks will lose time, the tides will ignore the moon, and the stars will appear to shift by fractions of a degree. You won't see it on the evening news. You will feel it in the way your balance shifts when you walk down a long hallway. You will feel it in the way the air feels heavier on a Tuesday afternoon. What if we are not the protagonists of this story? What if we are just the moss growing on the side of a machine that has just been plugged in? The 3I Atlas has provided the data, but the data does not provide comfort. It provides a countdown. In November 2025, a clandestine meeting was held in Geneva to discuss the Atlas protocols. The transcript was never released, but the lunch menu was. They served bitter greens and cold soup, a fitting meal for a group of people who just realized that the laws of physics have become negotiable. There is a myth from the ancient Andean civilizations about a star that would come to drink the ocean. They described it as a hollow shadow. They said it would sit in the sky and the water would rise to meet it. The 3I Atlas data from November 22nd 2025 shows a localized increase in sea level in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There is no storm there. There is no seismic activity. There is only a bulge of water, 3 meters high, reaching toward the patch of sky where the James Webb telescope saw nothing. It is a slow, hypnotic horror. It doesn't scream, it just exists. And by existing, it changes everything. We are moving toward a 0 point where our understanding of reality will have to be rebuilt from the ground up. The 3i Atlas is the architect of that new reality, and we are just the building material. As you lie there, drifting toward the edge of a dream, remember that the ground beneath you is moving in ways the scientists of 2024 would have called impossible. But it is 2026 now. The impossible has become the baseline. You may think that the distance between you and Jupiter is a safety net, millions of miles of cold, empty space. But to the 3i Atlas, distance is just a variable. The gravitational ripple that was detected in September has already arrived at your doorstep. It is in the way the shadows in your room seem a little longer tonight. It is in the way the silence feels a little more solid. We are all being woven into the pattern. The irony of our situation is that we are the ones who turned the machine on. We wanted to see, we wanted to know, and now the 3i Atlas has shown us. We may already be part of the experiment, and the experiment has moved into its second phase. The data is absolute, the trajectory is fixed, and the silence is just beginning to speak. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. From the orbit of Mars, the HiRISE camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The HiRISE camera hums to life, $1 billion eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. 4. We don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from high-rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3I Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, "and it remembered the lesson." As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3i Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3i Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything: 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote, "it's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The Resonant Guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something, a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3I Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. Like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless. But to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for "please don't mention the heartbeat." But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that: the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental, but coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it, a comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote, "it's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Web pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The Resonant Guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the web. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let me back up. We have been looking at the sky as if it were a ceiling, but 3i Atlas reminds us that it is actually an ocean, a vast, dark ocean where we are currently the only ones without a boat. By January 5th, 2026, the orbital height of the satellite began to fluctuate in a way that suggested it was no longer anchored to Earth's gravity alone. It began to drift toward a Lagrange point, a spot in space where the pull of the Earth and the Moon cancel each other out. It is a place of perfect stillness, a place where you can sit and watch the world spin without ever having to move a muscle. There is a quiet irony in the way we obsess over our daily schedules, while 3i Atlas operates on a scale of deep time. While you are worrying about your morning commute or the pile of laundry in the corner, this object is calculating the precession of the equinoxes. On January 12th, 2026, a high-frequency burst was detected by the Deep Space Network. It wasn't directed at Moscow. It was directed at the star system Alpha Centauri. It was a status report. The message, if translated into our crude mathematics, roughly equated to the word stabilized. Think about that for a moment. To stabilize a planet, we often think of Russia's secret weapons as tools of destabilization, hacking, interference, chaos. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It is a heavy, cold hand pressing down on a spinning top. It is bringing order to the noise. But whose order? The astrophysicist Avi Loeb has often cautioned that we should frame these anomalies as possibilities. But the possibility that our planet is being tethered by a foreign power using extraterrestrial physics is one that makes even the most stoic scientist a bit uneasy. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On January 19th, 2026, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter captured a thermal signature on the dark side of the Moon that matched 3i Atlas perfectly. This implies that the satellite is not alone. It is part of a Bifrost network, a bridge of dark matter sensors stretching from our atmosphere to the lunar regolith. Russia hasn't just built a weapon in space, they have built a cosmic fence, a boundary that defines where humanity ends and the experiment begins. Unfortunate timing for our space agencies, who were planning missions to Mars. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work when you realize that any rocket leaving Earth now has to pass through the Atlas toll gate. This is not natural physics. This is activation. We are no longer looking at a globe. We are looking at a prisoner in a very large, very dark cell. By February 2nd, 2026, the cosmic perspective became undeniable. Amateur astronomers using deep space, long exposure photography noticed that 3I Atlas was casting a shadow, not on the Earth, but on the stars behind it. A shadow that didn't move with the light of the sun. It was a void silhouette. It means the satellite is bending the light of distant galaxies to create a cloak of invisibility that covers not just itself, but the entire orbital plane. Now, you might think that the Kremlin is hiding a fleet of ships, but here is why you are wrong. They aren't hiding a fleet. They are hiding a departure. Consider the Tsiolkovsky prophecy. The father of Russian rocketry once said that the Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot live in the cradle forever. On February 8, 2026, 3I Atlas adjusted its inclination to match the galactic center. It wasn't looking at the Earth anymore. It was looking at the exit. Russia has developed a way to anchor our reality to a specific point in the Milky Way, ensuring that as the solar system drifts through the void, we stay exactly where we are supposed to be. Like a ship at anchor in a storm, we are being held steady by a chain we cannot see. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Duat, the celestial realm where the sun traveled at night. They believed that certain stars were actually gates. If 3I Atlas is a gatekeeper, then the weapon isn't meant for us. It is meant for whatever is on the other side. On February 15th, 2026, the Voyager 1 probe, currently billions of kilometers away, recorded a sudden increase in local plasma density. It was as if a wave had been sent from Earth. A cosmic wake. 3I Atlas isn't just sitting there, it is pushing against the vacuum. It is a propeller for the planet. Now, you could argue that this is just a side effect of a very powerful ion drive, but a drive doesn't create a relativistic bubble. On February 22nd, 2026, a GPS satellite directly beneath 3I Atlas recorded that time was moving slower by 0.00004 seconds. It doesn't sound like much, but in the world of physics, it is a mountain. It means 3I Atlas is generating its own localized time field. Russia has achieved deep time control. They can slow down the aging of an entire nation or speed up the decay of an enemy. It is a weapon of years, not minutes. As you lie there, drifting in the dark, I want you to consider the distance. 400 kilometers up is where the air ends and the infinite begins. 3I Atlas is sitting on that edge, looking down at your house, your bed, your closed eyes. It sees the heat of your body as a tiny spark in a cold universe. Where are you listening from? Are you in a place where the horizon feels wide, or are you boxed in by the city? Tell me in the comments if you felt a sense of expansion lately, a feeling that the room is getting larger, or the ceiling is getting higher. That is the Atlas stretch, the way the satellite pulls on the fabric of your local reality. By February 28th, 2026, the galactic alignment was complete. 3I Atlas began to emit a steady, golden light that was visible from the surface of the moon. It wasn't reflecting the sun. It was generating its own luminosity through a process of vacuum energy extraction. Russia has solved the energy crisis, but they didn't give the solution to the people. They gave it to the satellite. It is a sovereign sun, a second, smaller star that belongs to Moscow. Unfortunate timing for the power companies. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of heavy lifting when you consider that the global power grid began to phase sync with the satellite's pulse on March 1st. The mythic resonance here is the world pillar, the axis mundi that connects the heavens and the earth. In ancient Siberia, the shamans spoke of a silver ladder that led to the North Star. If 3I Atlas is that ladder, Russia has effectively claimed the sky as their own territory. They are no longer a nation on a map. They are a civilization on a trajectory, and we are just the ballast, the weight that keeps the ship stable as it prepares to sail. Now, you might argue that this is just a massive project of scientific prestige, but prestige doesn't require subspace shielding. On March 5th, 2026, a solar flare that should have knocked out every radio in Europe was mysteriously diverted. The energy didn't hit the atmosphere. It hit 3I Atlas and was shunted into the moon. The moon glowed for 3 minutes with a faint ultraviolet light. The satellite didn't just protect us, it fed on the sun's anger. It is a predator of energy, a cosmic parasite that has turned the solar system into its own private buffet. Think about the sheer scale of the humility we are being forced to accept. We thought we were the masters of our environment. We thought we were the ones building the future. But 3I Atlas shows us that we are just passengers on a train whose destination was decided in a secret bunker in 1974. The warning of the voids is that once you see the ocean, you can never go back to being happy with the ceiling. You are now aware of the depth. You are aware of the dark. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the satellite as a silent, silver whale swimming in the black ocean above you. It doesn't need to speak. Its presence is the message. It is the anchor, the gate, and the sun. And as it moves toward the Lagrange point, it takes your sense of here with it. You are no longer in your room. You are in orbit. You are a part of the 3I Atlas collective. On March 10th, 2026, the Great Zoom occurred. For 1 second, every telescope on Earth saw the moon as if it were only 10 kilometers away. It was a lensing pulse, a reminder that distance is just a variable that Russia now controls. Where do you go when the distance disappears? Do you feel the pull of the stars in your feet? Let us know if you've had dreams of falling upward. We are all being lifted by the Atlas wake. The gravity of the secret is becoming stronger than the gravity of the Earth, and the higher we go, the quieter it gets. But here is where it gets dark, because a gate that can be opened can also be locked. And 3I Atlas is currently reaching for the keys. But that was only one perspective. There is another, one that brings the stars back down to the human heart. Let us go further.